Hello and welcome to SHOWstudio's fully digital live panel discussions. This season, experts from all parts of the industry will discuss and debate the most important subjects affecting the fashion industry. Today, in the midst of Paris Men's Fashion Week, we'll be discussing Rick Owens S 2021 Menswear. My name is Darkwah Kyei-Darkwah. I am your chair today. I am an entertainment news presenter for Black Entertainment Television, freelance stylist and art director also. And our panelists, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, we'll start with David.
Hi, hello, how are you? My name is David Martin and I'm the editor-in-chief of Oda Magazine and I'm in Madrid right now.
Ayo?
My name is Ayo. I'm a writer and videographer, and I also have a YouTube channel called The Fashion Archive where I talk about fashion history and analyze runway shows.
Nina?
Hi, I'm Nina van Volkinburg, and I'm an academic and lecturer at the London College of Fashion.
And finally, Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Hope. I currently work as a freelance consultant for design and marketing strategies, and I'm based out of New York, but currently in Los Angeles.
Well, welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. Before we get into everything, I think it's always good to just check in with everyone, see how everybody's doing. So how is everybody and how have you been throughout lockdown?
Well, I think like everyone else, I guess that we were trying to, I don't know, slow down our life, because I think when you work in fashion, you are like used to be traveling nonstop all the time. And I have to confess that myself, I got a lot of pressure of that because you were meeting so many amazing people and you were, I don't know, feeling the energy of the industry in a different dimension. But I truly believe that this made us all think that we are more connected maybe than we were thinking that we were before. And I hope and I truly believe that this is making us all thinking forward in what's coming after. And I think it's a positive way of thinking, I guess. So I guess that it has been okay. Has been great.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. I mean, that idea of reflection, of taking some time to see, what's working, what needs to change, how do we move forward as an industry in a positive way? Yeah, it's an important time to engage in new ways of working.
I think it was a great time to reflect and be introspective because there was so much happening in the world up until now and things were almost moving too fast. Yeah. And I could think of a lot of things as if we had a plane where the engine was broken, but we were waiting for it to crash. And I think that's what happened here with fashion, with politics, with all sorts of stuff. And because we've crashed, we can allow this as a time to reset and relearn how we're going to do things. And I think that's been the most beneficial thing from this time period, whether for myself or for global culture in general.
Yeah, I agree when you're talking about just the reset of the fashion industry. I think what we also need to consider is brands that are also saying they're resetting. I hope that's a long-term thing. I hope that's not a thing where they're just virtue signaling because everyone's like, yeah, you need to be sustainable now. Like, don't have too many runway shows. And then once like everything is back to normal, suddenly we're back to pre-fall 10 times a year.
No, I think definitely the reset and take stock is something that it's a line that's been running through every industry as well. And I think particularly in fashion, it's kind of manifesting in quite interesting ways. I felt like that with this collection. I thought, actually, before I say anything, what did you think of this collection from Rick Owens?
I have to say that I was happy to see the new collection because Rick Owens is somebody that is appealing and is talking to a very concrete kind of market and a very concrete target. But at the same time, I think it's a brand that provides you like a sense of identity that you need to be very sure about yourself when you are wearing Rick Owens. And I think it's very liberating for you when you are wearing Rick Owens So this collection for me was like an open door for many people that was not used to understand the work of Rick Owens, get more connected with him. Like pieces that you can wear daily basis, pieces that you can feel more comfortable mixing with other basics of your kind of way of dressing yourself every day. And I saw more like color mixed with the dark side of Rick Owens and not losing his identity with the shoes, with the heels, but at the same time, those pink sneakers, like like that kind of touch of color that I was very happily surprised to see in a more wearable collection. So that's
Yeah, and I thought it was actually quite an optimistic collection in terms of the color and the palette. And, it still was quite elegant despite, the elements of it being a bit slouchy. It was quite very comfortable to wear. And I think in, the quote new normal of our lives, it's something that, people would want to wear today. And what fascinated me was really how the collection was presented. We've seen other designers, try to recreate somewhat of a runway. We've seen other designers try to make more of a film, engage in storytelling. But this was very raw. It was very, kind of behind the scenes, what happens, before one runway show. And so that's what fascinated me is how it was, the content of it.
Okay, Ayo and Michael.
I'll go first. I think by Rick Owens standard, it was very commercial. But apart from it being very commercial, it was also good, like David said, because there's still people who are just finding about Rick Owens, and this will be a good kind of way to bridge the gap, between those crazy avant-garde clothes and then actual wearable clothes that someone just coming in can be like, okay, this is not too far. But I do look to Rick Owens for a lot of innovation, and this collection really reminded me of the Moncler collab, because with the Moncler collab, he did probably the same thing where he was just like, let me just take some of my old classics and then just make one whole collection over stuff I've already made. And I would have liked to see more from Rick Owens, but at the same time, I do appreciate what I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think while that wasn't something totally new, it was taking the brand more back to its roots. Because you look at with Rick, kind of from 2007 to 2009, he did a very similar black and white lookbook style for his men's collections and didn't do runway. So I feel when there's so much more exposure and a wider market for the brand now, he's taking it back to what it was maybe before and letting people kind of start from the bottom instead of being overwhelmed. I mean, his last two runway shows were an onslaught of just heavy ideas, which I think is really good. And I liked the fall 2020 show a lot, but I think taking some of those same ideas and scaling them back, but in a way that still feels new, is really good. I do have some criticisms because I think that there's certain stuff where he's been making these silhouettes for seasons and seasons, and with how wide his distribution is and stuff not fully selling through, there's just a multitude of product already. So I would hope that there was maybe a little bit more new silhouettes in there, but I understand if he didn't have the time or resources given our current situation.
I think you guys have been very kind. Because when I looked at it, because when I looked at Rick Owens, I think about when I first came across Rick Owens when I was like, I think it was 2012, and I was wearing all of the looser silhouettes, the drapes. I can't remember the pieces because they've all deteriorated in my wardrobe from being overworn so much. But I felt that there was an aspect of it that was missing for me. As a kid who was discovering his queerness, I felt that when I wore Rick Owens' piece, I was kind of like playing with that queerness and my queer identity, and it did feel liberating. But I look at this collection, while there are elements of queerness, it feels calmer. And in conversation with my sister when we were talking about it, we thought that this might be a reflection on maybe how COVID-19 and like life in lockdown and working in lockdown might be affecting the way in which obviously we produce, but then also the way in which we will designers design and reach people. I think it's a very reflective collection, but I'm not sure that the queer representation aspect is as high as I might have wanted it to be. Which leads me to actually asking, do you, because I'm not sure how many other collections you guys have looked at, whether you've been watching all of them. I lose sleep over watching them, but do you feel that within this collection, the raucous and unbridled queerness that we have seen with Rick Owens, do you think that this collection is a sign of that being kind of tamed a little bit? And if so, what effect do you think that might have on his consumer base?
I think right now less is more, and I truly believe that also. I guess he's trying to get the identity of what Rick Owens is back from the core of the brand. And that's why I like it how the collection was presented with his friend that is also doing the runway all the time as he's opening the shows lately, and making everything like very at home, let's say. And in a way or another, I think I like it because I truly believe that, as we were talking before, everyone needs to stop for a second, and even though, as Michael was saying before about maybe missing some silhouettes, I think at the same time, as many people needs to get used to Rick Owens from the starting point of view, I think this collection, it's a good way to connect with new consumers and new markets probably, and more people that is willing to wear Rick Owens, because I think right now is such an amazing moment and opportunity for everyone to connect with markets and connect with consumers, because everyone wants to see identity and people wants to understand who the designers are, and people wants to know who is behind that clothing. It's not this untouchable vibe that honestly I think is really, really like part of the past. I truly believe it's important for the designers to step up and say, hey, this is me, this is what I do, these are my collections. This is the most basic things that you can get. You know where I can arrive, what I can do on the top of my mind. So I think it's a good balance. And I think can be an opportunity for the brand to be way, way more, let's say, visible out of just the fashion industry or people loving Rick Owens. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Really focus. Oh, sorry, I interrupted. Michael, go ahead.
All right. So from what David was saying, I think that I'd like to speak a little bit on the contrary, because I feel especially a brand like Rick Owens, even though they offer such directional product for the majority of the time, they've sold this idea of growth within their brand, which many other brands do, which has become kind of their sole focus. And Rick Owens is just such a large scale brand with so much distribution. And back to what I was saying before, they're kind of selling something that already exists in a quantity higher than the demand. And I think that Rick Owens does have, like, you can always look for a new audience. There's always someone new that's going to be introduced to something. But I definitely think there's the cap on that. And I think that people maybe sometimes want something a little bit different. Like maybe to get that new customer, you have to do something different. And I don't really feel like he captured that with this collection. And when I see stuff like that, the flannel plaid that he used in this collection, I appreciate, in the last few seasons, how Rick has used so much more color, because he actually did that a lot earlier in his designs. Earlier in his career, he used a lot more color. He wasn't this dark designer that everyone knows him for. But at the same time, doing that, it really seems like this is more of a pre-collection. And I almost felt like some of those pieces, he wants to sell to the customer that's scared to buy Rick Owens and buys Fear of God. That's what it felt like to me, or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I agree with the comments made. But I guess one of the challenges of, the the digital runway, you know, how collections have been presented. I mean, we have to think about the audience and how everybody sees this at a certain time. And so, you know, focusing on, you know, key pieces from the archives and, you know, maybe they're not as cutting edge or as innovative, but, you know, it does, you know, draw or, you know, people are more comfortable to wear something maybe not as avant-garde. And, you know, that base then can grow maybe for next season, which would, you know, hopefully be, you know, back, you know, in person on a runway show. But I thought it was also quite interesting how, in terms of presentation, it was just so stripped back. And, you know, we live in an age of, you know, excess content everywhere. And so this was kind of a contradiction of, it was quite quiet, you know, black and white, you know, very intimate, you know, just Rick and, you know, his muse. And, you know, we were kind of this fly on the wall, and, you know, maybe some, you know, some outfits we were like, oh, that's quite interesting, and others, you know, we would reject. But I thought it's just an interesting dynamic of also going forward of, you know, this idea of the fashion show. And, you know, it's interesting that this was Rick's take on it. So yeah.
Ayo?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to quote Rick Owens, in his defense, he did say that there were some production issues that happened because of COVID-19, so it slowed down the process. And that's why he was actually just considering re-showing some stuff that he left out from last season. But then last minute, he kind of changed his mind. So I guess in his defense, with everything that's going on, it's kind of difficult to innovate when there's so little like resources available to you. But that being said, it's also, a part of me is like, I still expect more, especially because with the Montclair thing that he did recently as well, it was the same, oh, let me just go back into the archive. So it seems like he's starting to do this over and over again, to the point where I'm like, when are we going to see some innovation? But that being said, he did also say that he wanted this collection to reflect the times, hence why he had the security cameras and everything was stripped down. And he did say from next season, he's going to have a much more exciting show. So that's really what I'm looking forward to.
Okay. I think that is a fair point made when we're talking about in terms of like having resources and, you know, production issues, etc. But I think I personally feel that it doesn't necessarily, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be allowed a showstopper. That doesn't necessarily, just because we are in times where, you know, we are speaking about very important issues, issues that should have been addressed for a long time. And so we want to reflect the times. While I appreciate the save, Ayo, with all respect, I feel that Brother Rick has kind of underdelivered on this occasion. Because even when you think about the name of the collection is Phlegathon, which Dante wrote to be the river of fire that sweeps through the seventh circle of hell. And as a Scorpio, being told we do reside in the seventh circle of hell ourselves, I felt that it didn't have the energy that, if we're talking about reflecting the times, and we're talking about genuinely reflecting the times, we have to talk about the energy and vigor with which we are talking about Black Lives Matter, the treatment of trans people, and that's energized, right? That's very, very forward and not in your face in an aggressive way, but it's there, it's ever present. And I just felt that I personally felt that there was a bit too much stillness to actually say that it represents the times. Thoughts? Sorry.
I think it's, the problem is, as you said, many things are going on in the world that we need to start to take action on it, and we need to be more conscious about matters that were happening and we were not really taking attention. So I'm gonna go to the personal side of a creative. I guess that maybe others are more outstanding on how they present their new collections. Maybe others are a little bit more, I don't know, in the middle of nowhere. But I truly believe as well that we need to keep in mind that a creative is a person as any other. And you need to go through so many different personal processes to understand everything that is happening. And you need to try to portray that in a way that how you want to provide a message. So I truly believe that that takes time, and as well as we said before, he was having some issues with production, and also the way that maybe he was planning to provide a vision of his new collection and who he is, let's say. So I think that now it's important to really again stop and think about what we have to do to provide visibility and a right message to everyone that deserves to be listened, and how we need to start to be out of our bubble, that nobody was like really taking serious what was going on, even if it was in front of all of us. And I think now all the creatives having this power with the collections and how to present the collections is the first step to a right future for everyone. That's what I think.
I feel like we've spoken around the collection, so let's get into the collection. Are there any looks that any of you particularly like? I'm a look queen. I'm one of those girls that will like go onto the website, zoom in, look at that heel, fantasy. So let's talk clothing. Let's talk actual pieces. Was there anything that stood out for you?
Yeah, I think first off, you can see here there's the one look with the knee-high boots and that kind of, you can't really tell what's going on from the way, yeah, that one exactly.
Yeah.
And I've realized, so the thing that's kind of coming down is a men's one-piece leotard swimsuit with a sleeve that can be folded down. And then the boot is great. I really like that boot. The heel, it's not shown here. I saw the line sheet, and the boot, basically it's, you have the toe, of a rubber bunny boot, like a cold weather military boot, which has been done, by Raf Simons and later imitated by many other designers. But it's a great shape. I love how bulky and masculine it is. And then you kind of take that up and you have this worker boot, but in a kind of, it has a bit of a heel, and it's the perfect blend of like very like brutal masculine workwear sort of stuff, but with a bit of a glam edge that you could see maybe in the Kiss heels, which he's been doing for a few seasons.
Yeah.
So I like that he takes that and maybe makes it aesthetically more in line with something more versatile, because that can fit into Rick's language, but that can fit into a lot of other designers who don't incorporate the same other elements that Rick has. But then, the rest of the outfit is very current Rick in the sense that it's this glam kind of David Bowie, vibe. And I like that he's done that, because it takes something he's played with a lot and takes it further. But at the same time, like, this outfit is just so much better from the waist down. But that's the part that stood out to me.
100%. I think one of the notes that I wrote on that look was, what is this short skirt moment? We love a low V. So very good. Nina, was there anything that stood out to you? Or were there any looks that stood out to you?
Well, they all kind of blended in together, but one that stood out was the kind of the leather double layer mesh tank top, which is a nod to, I think, one of the 2012 collections.
Yeah, 2012. I think it was the nod to the Menswear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was nice to kind of pepper that throughout the collection, to kind of make it a bit more energetic, what we were speaking about earlier. So, there was something for, somebody who would, maybe want to experiment a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, I personally liked the kind of surfer edge to it, especially with kind of this look. But yeah, and then obviously all of the other kind of Rick, aesthetics. So kind of the boxy blazers, the kind of baggy drop crotch trousers. So again, it was very Rick. You could see it, from a mile away. Yeah, but that was what stood out for me.
Ayo?
Okay, so for me, I've seen most of the stuff, to be very honest with you, but the look that stood out to me was look 2, and the main reason is because when I first got into Rick, what really inspired me about Rick was I'm this like so-called masculine guy, right? Who's coming into this world of queerness. And Rick was the first person that I thought, this guy makes heels, but they look masculine. They don't actually look feminine. Like I could wear that. And that, if you look at that look, it just really screams masculinity, but at the same time queerness.
Yeah.
So it as a look in general, it really, really resonated with me. The same thing with like, that's how I feel about Rick's skirts.
Yeah.
I don't know how he designs it. He's just a master at tailoring to the point where he can make skirts that look like men should be wearing them. So that was the look that stood out to me.
Yeah. David?
Well, I think I don't have like a look in I guess I'm more talking about the whole collection. And like Ayo just said, this how he creates these shapes that could be very feminine, but at the same time, they're really masculine. So this is something that I will highlight of the whole collection, let's say, not just a particular look.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's Rick Owens is a brand that in this collection as well, I see it, you can feel like it's a new masculinity and how you take the pieces to be part of yourself. So even from the seconds that I saw, from these high boots in pink to that boxy kind of jacket, like David Bowie, like Michael said before, but it's still something that you see is masculine. And it's something you can wear with, I don't know, with whatever, I guess. You really can mix with everything. So this is one of the best things that I think Rick Owens is having since forever. Like also that you can see himself wearing everything, every single piece. And you see him and it's like, well, this is the man. So I think that's, I don't have like a cool, like a look, let's say. I'm speaking about the global approach.
I find it interesting that, because obviously we all know that Rick has cited David Bowie as a kind of like an overarching inspiration. But I find it interesting that his name's being used in relation to this collection. But that's just, I don't know, maybe I'm just dramatic. Maybe I just like the theatrics of it all, I don't know.
I think he's taking from themes like in his last few collections, and maybe more so than I'm seeing. I'm probably not seeing the David Bowie influences heavily in this collection, but it's pieces from past collections where he connected that as the inspiration. So I feel like it's a further evolution of that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that plaid moment that happened. I believe that's look 23. Yes. Michael, you said that Rick had used this this pattern earlier in earlier work. Is that right?
No, I'm saying about the colors that are in the pattern,
right.
not the pattern itself.
Okay, because while I am fully here for a brand growing and evolving, and also understanding that in these times where, you know, we're having to axe collections, or maybe like we're not selling as many collections or making as many sales from a collection due to COVID-19, that, you know, things have to be more palatable, I'll say, for people who maybe didn't otherwise identify with the brand. But I feel like the colors, yes, the way he used color in his last collection, I thought was really beautiful. There were blocks of color, and then they were like kind of slowly woven into one another. A jacket that was, I believe, like cornflower blue and orange. I can't remember which look it was. In last season's collection, I think it was near the end. That I thought was a smart use of color. This, I felt like I didn't really know this person. Do you think that this collection may not turn away, but may confuse diehard Rick fans? I know that there are obviously reiterations of pieces that he has made before, but the way in which he's doing it now, do you think that that might confuse or change his customer base in any way?
For sure. I think stuff like this look is really just the sort of thing that they would have on a line sheet for a pre-collection. It's filler, you know.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff in this collection, like the look I had mentioned earlier, that I feel takes existing stuff and evolves it. But this to me just feels like it doesn't need to be there. I think the message of this could have been in the line sheet, you know, but the message of the collection would have been stronger, I think, if they cut out some of these looks.
I guess Oh, sorry. Go.
No, please go on.
So I think what's interesting as well is, I mean, because of the way we're viewing the collection, it being, online, white background, and typically in e-commerce, clothing that, is very bright, very colorful, does better commercially. So I think kind of these elements, for example, this blazer, this jacket, it does draw the eye of, certain potential clients that maybe weren't as familiar with Rick, and then they see something like this as opposed to maybe some more muted colors. And, it does have that kind of more kind of commercial aspect. And I think, again, because of this pandemic, brands, including these avant-garde brands like Rick Owens, they have to, have a few pieces to pull in this new clientele, because we're kind of adapting to this. So that's really kind of the only, maybe creatively it doesn't really fit. However, I see kind of reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I fully understand that point, and I'm with you to an extent. I just feel that when you have a few pieces that you're using to bring in a new customer base or to bring people to relate to the brand, that's fine. When you create a collection that ultimately looks, apart from one jacket, which I'm not fond of, it's like a super like high, like power shoulder caps. It looks like a cap sleeve because the sleeves have been cut off. Sleeveless jacket. I think it's worn over a white vest of some sort. When you have a collection that just feels like all of the pieces are there to do that, like is this spelling a new way in which brands are going to speak to us? Do you think that this is actually going to be something that we see more? There's going to be less drama, less showpieces, and more things that people can actually grab because of the new way in which we're living? Or do you think that this is just a hiccup?
I hope not. I have to say, one of the things that I most like of fashion is that it's not only the pieces you will be wearing, if not the dream, and how to connect with the industry in a very different level. So I'm particularly against the no show anymore. I think that is a big mistake, and I truly believe the fashion industry, as we know today, must keep the fashion shows, because it's when you are really providing what the brand is in all different levels, from the runway looks to the commercial looks. But at the same time, I think it's a way to understand a little bit more who is understanding you when things are more basic. I think you need to have a balance into how you portray yourself. And again, in a brand like Rick Owens, it's particularly sometimes complicated because he is that kind of designer that in the shows, he puts everything on order. So if you are in the show, you are like a raver. You have like that crazy music. You have like the I don't know, the smoke there with color, and then you have the heels, and you have the energy of the models. The models are weird, and everything is like a different world. That if you are, sometimes I speak about like the fashion industry. Sometimes just speak about the fashion industry. We need to speak about the consumers, and some people don't understand what is that in the fashion. What is fashion? What is that? So I think, coming back again to my words, I'm thinking about what Michael said, that I'm agree with him as well. I think this is a way to make him more human, let's say, I don't know, more accessible. So, but I hope not all the brands are following this step, because I think some of them has been really like flat in the past years. And I think now is the moment for them to boom, to have like a moment of, here I am, this is me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm really hoping that this isn't a change that we're going to see for a long time, because even like, to talk about another brand, Balenciaga, they released their collection recently, and that was ultra commercial as well. So the direction of the industry, even Rick Owens, to quote him again, he has said that he likes very aspirational runway shows, and he feels like a lot of designers put things on the runway that don't need to be there. And that's why he always says that he's a big fan of like Balmain and the shows that they put on and stuff like that. So knowing Rick, I don't expect this from him in the next collection. Like I said, because I know Darkwah said I had a quick save for Rick, but To be very honest, though, he did have issues with production, and it's
Yeah.
it's a rough time in terms of designing.
Again with the save. Are you on payroll?
I wish.
No one here is on the phone. Just oh God, what am I thinking? So I have always been a fan of Rick Owens, so I made loads of notes and I'm like flicking through them trying to find something. But so I just want to touch on, from my perspective, the queerness aspect of things, right? So I woke up this morning and I was like, okay, cool, we're gonna do this panel today. Let me just refresh my memory of what's actually been put out, right? And I find that when I'm looking at brands that, as Michael said, do have really large distributions, what I'm seeing is this kind of unbridled, like hurtling forward into like the queer, non-binary, gender fluid domains has kind of started like paring back a little bit. And while I can understand that from the perspective of being a brand and needing to make money, I think that might have an interesting and potentially negative effect on the queer consumer base, and also people who just actually want to, or who are actually using fashion to express themselves in that way. I don't think it should be down. Obviously, queer designers are still holding true to themselves, but seeing yourself represented in a brand like Rick Owens, Balmain, Balenciaga, wherever, in that very specific way that really does speak to you, does a lot. Like mentally, we're all at home. We're very familiar with our four walls now, So when you see something that's outside of your existence that reflects you, that then kind of like brings you out as well. And I feel like COVID-19 has inadvertently started to kind of like slow queer washing of fashion. But that could just be from my perspective, because again, I love the drama. How do you guys see, do you see this happening at all? And if so, where? And what do you think of it?
I totally see it. I think these brands are trying to focus on the Asian market. I think because both Asia has had some of the best response and the quickest, earliest response because they faced it first. Their markets have started to recover more, and you have people shopping there while people in the West are not really buying anything at all. And obviously, they're less open to that and less responsive. A lot of that customer is. And I think that the brands are just kind of going along with that. So at the end of the day, it's about finding, how do you bring something new to a customer that wants the same old thing? How do you help bring them along to change their taste and appreciate something different than what they're used to? And I think a lot of people are just used to streetwear. They're used to casual clothing. And with the whole growth thing that I mentioned before, a lot of these brands outside of Rick have changed their whole approach. Even if they put really crazy stuff on the runway, that stuff is not getting sold to stores. They're selling t-shirts, jeans, sweatpants, sneakers, for guys who like, as we call it, soccer, stuff like that. And those people can be into fashion too, but I think that when you sacrifice the rawness, when you sacrifice a lot of things, you can sacrificing the queerness, if that's the identity of the designer, that hurts the brand in the long run, because I think you're not being your full self. And when you're not being your full self, you don't represent. What do you stand for? What does Rick Owens stand for when he's selling running shoes and a flannel? If I want running shoes and a flannel, I'll go to Walmart. I don't want to buy that from Rick Owens. If I want to spend a lot of money on something, I can get something good quality somewhere else. If I want something that excites me, something that makes me feel like I'm doing something new, something that feels like I can express myself, I want clothing that's not a $700, $800 flannel shirt from Rick Owens. This shirt was $15. I'd rather not. But I have runway coats that I've spent,
Mhm.
I've saved up my money for months to buy. So like it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing I'll add to that is that, I'm a straight white dude, but what really excited me in fashion in the last few years was Hood by Air, when they really first came onto the market. And I was young and I didn't understand it fully, but what it was something raw, someone sticking to themselves, someone not doing it's everything now is so based on data. These brands they have investors, they have all this stuff, and they look at data and they say, and a lot of that data is not like genuine. It's a lot of bullshit. And pardon my French, but like it's selling something on the premise that there's a demand for it instead of offering something and leading people by example. That's what we have. Yeah.
And that stifles that element of risk taking and trying something new. And also, I mean, one positive element is that, all of these, the times we're living in now, it's the power is with the people, with, us. It's not really just about, these big brands that have, maybe a message that doesn't come across as authentic, but we're the ones that are actually driving conversations that are creating these changes. And so maybe some brands, maybe bigger brands like a Rick Owens, they maybe feel, they don't feel it's right to maybe kind of dictate and say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what you guys have to do. But it's really, they're a bit quiet. And I mean, there's like a positive and a negative there. But I think, what makes this moment so special is that through social media, through this kind of, democratization through social media, we have the ability to kind of create these changes and not just those kind of bigger brands or those, kind of in power,
Ayo?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like brands like Rick Owens or other queer brands that I'm a big fan of, like a Telfar, or like Michael said, Hood by Air or Charles Jeffrey, these type of brands. I think with all these brands, I expect creativeness from them because I expect commercial designs from people under big conglomerates like an LVMH or a Kering, where they do have that data and they're like, you have to follow this, or if we don't hit our sales targets, then someone's going to lose their job. I think the brands that aren't under this big corporate hood actually have a chance to be more creative and lead the way.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of get disappointed when they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would like to see all the big brands to take more attention of the people. I think the majority of them don't really spend time to take a look around. I think they don't really spend time to think about what the people would like to see next. And again, they've fallen into the same mistakes, trying to do again and again the same thing that they have been doing lately, but changing, I don't know, a color or a small shape, and trying to explode the same thing, I don't know for how many seasons. And they are losing the track. And I think they are losing the connection with, as you say, with everyone, that they want to be part of it and they want to wear something to feel themselves. And I truly believe that during this quarantine and what is happening right now in the world, people is losing what they were trying to do because of money.
Yeah.
So that scares me a little bit, because I don't know, I think like every single business, if you don't see an income coming back as you were planning, you need to cut those first initiatives that you were taking for changing the industry in a more appropriate way, and you coming back again to the same fails that you were taking before. That is just because you don't educate the consumer. If not, you just create things for you to gain money. It's not like you try people to understand what fashion is or what is more valuable or where you should try to push the consumer to spend the money in for them to keep a piece for a long term, let's say. It's just like, let's make them to buy these sneakers and then the next season, the same sneaker, and then the same sneaker again and again and again and again. No, but so I think I think the big brands should start to be more conscious about new designers, new creatives. They are way more free. They are way more, I don't know, experimenting. They are more connected with the different targets, the different kind of consumers, the different cultures, everything. And I truly believe they should spend more time with them, like daily basis.
I was going to ask, do you think the industry should go in a different direction? Like we've seen with magazines like Vogue, for example, and suddenly they're now realizing that their old guard is a bit too old and they need to pass the torch.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Do you think big brands also need to follow suit?
Well, in my opinion, the thing is that I'm coming back again to the same thing. I think people should take more attention into the young people. And I'm talking about really young people, because the young people is determining the culture that is happening now and is happening later. I think the people has been in the same position for 50 years. They should be more open to give the chance to the new generations to lead. And the new generations try to talk to the people that is buying now, that is consuming fashion now, and are dreaming for fashion now. Mm-hmm. So I have to say that during this situation, I have been reading so much sensationalism, let's say, in the articles that I was reading, and I was reading a lot of negative vibes of what fashion is. And I have been very disappointed because I don't think people was listening to the next generations and the new designers that are really, really, really fighting to keep going, and nobody's supporting them, more like a few people that is always there. Like I'm going to mention somebody like Sarah Minor. Sarah Minor is one of those persons that is constantly fighting for the new generations to keep following their paths and their dreams. And I think it's the same with the magazines. I have to say that it's everything in the same balance. But I'm going to say magazines, I'm going to say CEOs, I'm going to say production, I'm going to say accountants, I'm going to say like everything, because I truly believe that for you to get money back, you really need to connect with that person that is going to buy you, but not for once, if not for many times that is going to go and buy you. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm getting this income coming here, but I'm not going to get it anymore because that consumer doesn't know what we are doing here, and we change it all the time. Or for example, the mass production, I'm fully against to see half of my city wearing the same bag because it was a gift or because, I don't know, it was massive. It's like if you go to Zara, and that is something we all know, we all saw, and we all been concerned with. So I hope this situation is making things going like slowing down, the production be cut to the half, coming back again to artisans, coming back again to connect with a product, because the product is determining who you are, not just buying something because it's a trend right now. It's not looking more connected to who are you. So I hope this is what is happening. And I hope people in the same positions for 50 years understand that it's important to hire new designers. It's important to invest in new designers. It's important to give them money to preserve what fashion is. At least is what I think.
Yes, definitely. I'm definitely fully in agreement. And that actually led me into my last question. So thank you, Ayo, for doing that job. So I'm going to ask this to Nina and to Mike. What do you hope to see what do you hope to see by way of the fashion industry, by way of future collections? What do you hope to see?
Well, I hope that, well, as David, what you were saying in terms of slowing down, of focusing on, on quality, on work, on being more connected to your, I don't like the word consumer, but, citizens, to really, speak to younger generations, older generations as well. I mean, really it's about communities, and it's about, co-creating together. It's not this, I'm a designer, I'm going to tell you what to wear, but we're working together. We're bringing, kind of different elements of culture together. And that's really the beauty of fashion. And if we can do that in a way which, is, not exploiting anybody, whether that's, through work, through image, and also, sustainability is important. And if we don't at this moment, integrate that into your collections, whether you're, Rick Owens or, somebody more in the premium, market, it's going to be a huge issue in terms of moving forward. So that's really what I'm hoping is, we slow down and we focus really on, on the quality.
Michael?
Yeah, so myself as someone who is part of, by category, Gen Z, something I think about a lot, and through working in fashion and kind of getting a head start at such a young age, something I've realized is that a lot of these companies, a lot of these brands, a lot of these magazines even, they talk about youth. Youth is the biggest thing they sell their image on. But they don't do anything for the kids. They don't give the kids a voice, and a lot of kids they think they have to work through the same system, work up in a corporate ladder, go to fashion school to get to where they want. And I think there's a lot of people who have raw talent who aren't going to have the chance to have their voice heard. And I think the most important thing that these brands can do right now, and just the industry in general, is pass the torch. I think a lot about how there's a lot of marketing for inclusivity, whether that be on the basis of age, gender, race, sexuality, whatever it is. I feel like a lot of that they want to do that in a way where they can still keep the power.
Yeah.
And I think that these people need to be ready to step down. And it's hard for someone who has a lot of power to want to let it go. So I think a lot about these brands and what they do. Back to earlier, just another point I wanted to mention was I saw it from a few independent designers compared to much larger brand like Rick Owens. They actually use this time to say, you know what, I'm going to totally rehash and do a collection that's really raw. I'm thinking of Kiko Kostadinov. He did a show he totally evolved his brand forward, and he even scared his audience a little. And from that, you're going to see those same people who are not liking this collection a few months, right now, are going to be going crazy for it in a few months, because most people need time to warm up to things. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you can, trying to connect that now to what I said before, I think if you can have a closer dialogue between the industry and the brands and who they want to sell to, and you can't keep up this hierarchy anymore. This needs to be let go. And I think a lot of these brands need to, there's this democratization of fashion that's happened. But in reality, what that is that infinite product, more product than ever, for sale for below wholesale price. So anyone can buy fashion, anyone can consume, but no one can actually participate. That's the fake thing they've kind of sold us, and they've hurt themselves, and it's going to catch up to them as it started to. And I think from that, we're going to see a greater period of true inclusivity where people who have strong passions and ideas actually have their voice heard. So, I think it's time, I think Fashion Week, there's no need for it anymore. Fashion Week has become a ritualistic, perpetual cycle of doing the same thing when it's so clear that the reality is so disconnected from that. And I think it's not going to happen immediately, but I think this is the match to light the fire for the fashion industry to have to totally reevaluate itself. And I think that this conversation was needed in the last few years, but now the necessity, the need that these people truly cannot, financially, it's not sustainable to continue what they're doing. And I think that struggle will enable positive change in the future.
Well, time sure flies when you're having fun, guys. I think what I will do just before we sign off is I just wanted to circle back to, talking about, brands hiring young talent and new talent. When you think about the way in which conversations that we're having now are being had and had to be started, yes, it is up to those at the top to be able to kind of step aside or at least look to new people to bring in new ideas who can then eventually take the reins. But what we all have the power to do, and this is addressing everybody watching, and all of my beautiful panelists here, that what we can also do is use our platforms constantly to look for new talent, promote new talent, shout about new talent, connect them to different people. So just this, with the same fire that we're using to campaign for different demographics of people to be treated fairly and properly, we can also affect change from the ground up. So if you're at home and you're a fashion buff looking on Instagram and finding new designers and saving that into your little Instagram, collection, when you save it, also share it, because you sharing it allows 10 other people to see it, and then we can keep going and we can actually affect change from the bottom up as well. With that, I want to say thank you to all the panelists and thank you all for watching. For more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit SHOWstudio.com. And if you're watching via SHOWstudio's YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below, and we will see you next time. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I've been Darkwah Kyei-Darkwah, and this was our SHOWstudio panel for Rick Owens SS 2021. Thank you.